Blue Bloods is definitely one of those cop shows that's going to go down in TV history. Tackles hard-hitting subject matters like racism, sexual assault, and murder, whilst keeping you emotionally invested in the main characters. And it's handled in a way that means fans come back every week for more. But not every episode's perfect, and there are a few out there that haven't done as well as others. Today we're going to take a dive into which episode is the worst ranked on IMDb, and have a look at a couple of others that almost made that title. Just to get things started, how does the IMDb ranking system work? Is it fair? It is extremely fair. Unlike other websites that have rankings and ratings given by a select few number of critics, IMDb lets the public do that for them. Millions of users and movie fans flock to the website to submit their thoughts on the latest blockbusters and TV offerings, and the scores are averaged out. It's a really good way of quickly figuring out how much the public likes a particular movie. And for TV shows, scores are actually broken down by each episode, which means we could have a really deep dive. First, let's have an honorable mention, the third worst episode of Blue Bloods. The third worst ranked episode of Blue Bloods on IMDb is in season 11, and it's called Triumph Over Trauma. It was actually the season opener. The first episode of a brand new season is usually really good because it sets the mood for the rest of the season and draws viewers back in. But it looks as though the writers really dropped the ball with this one. This episode of Blue Bloods scored exactly 7 stars out of 10 on IMDb. Like we said earlier, the IMDb rating system is made up of averages. So if a group of fans decide that the episode was just okay, that could explain the rating. However, this is not what happened here. We can see from the rating state set that Triumph Over Trauma received 23.6% of its votes as 10 out of 10 stars. The rest of the reviews were kind of in the middle somewhere, except for a huge 11.5% of people who decided that the episode was only worth 1 out of 10 stars. This might not sound like a lot of users, but if you really think about it, 10% of people deciding that an episode was absolutely terrible is quite bad for the show. Why exactly did people hate it so much? When doing the research for this video, we came across one recurring theme for the negative reviews of this episode, and that theme is Whoopi Goldberg. Her parents in the show did not go over well with fans, who didn't think that her unique style blended well with the pre-existing style of the show. And it's fair enough. As the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We actually have some excerpts of reviews here for you to listen to for yourself, as fans really don't hold back on what they're feeling. One user said, "I don't understand how any longtime fan of Blue Bloods can give this episode any rating other than a 1. It's simply the worst of the entire series." Another fan wrote, "Horrendous writing and acting. Important issues discussed in such a way that the viewer can barely tell what's being discussed. Grossly disappointing resolution to a crisis situation." By the way, anger does not substitute for other emotions. I'm a huge fan of this show. Up until this episode, I could never imagine rating any episode 1 star. And these comments just kept coming. The review page is also limited with lots of puns on whoops for good measure. Throughout the rest of the season 1, the reviews definitely picked up a bit. So whatever the writers were doing with the first episode seems to have evened out in the later offerings. The second ever worst episode of Blue Bloods on IMDb is back in season 8. Do you remember Legacy? Well, fans certainly do, though not for the right reasons. Legacy scored the second lowest out of every single episode of the show, and we're going to find out why. Legacy has a rating of only 6.8 stars out of 10 stars. Considering the vast majority of episodes in this show have ratings of 8 and higher, the fact that this has slid down into the 6s really shows how much this episode is disliked by fans. Only 20% of fans thought this episode was 10 out of 10 stars, and 1-star ratings have crept up since the last one, with 13% of people thinking it deserved this low rating. Going by the comments left in the review section, lots of fans thought that the characters acted, well, out of character. In particular, this applies to Frank, who does not stick up for his fellow cops but acts more to save himself than anything else. This just isn't like him. Fans were not shy to tell the writers and creators exactly what they thought of his changing personality. Some quotes from the review section that sums up the feelings of fans include, "Thumbs down. Wrong on so many levels. Last episode I'll ever watch. And so bad I had to write a review." This really says everything we need to know. I think it's best if just leave this one here. And finally, what is the worst episode of Blue Bloods as ranked by IMDb? Drum roll, please. And And the winner is Burning Bridges. Or should we say loser? Burning Bridges aired back in season 5 and received a pretty poor score of only 6.7 stars out of 10. Ouch, that's pretty terrible. The name is appropriate, as Blue Bloods seems to have burnt bridges with some of their fans over this episode. There are slightly more people who gave the episode a 10 out of 10, with 21.1% of people voting full stars. However, the number of users who voted the episode 1 star out of 10 is the highest that we've seen yet, with 15.3% of people doing so. Why have so many users felt the need to give the episode the lowest rating they possibly could? Oh, this time seems as though it has nothing to do with the writing or the acting, but more about the message of the episode itself. What is Burning Bridges about? Obviously, like the vast majority of episodes of Blue Blood, Burning Bridges deals with more than one storyline at a time. A secondary storyline is to do with James and Eddie working on a revenge mission. They've had trouble in the past, but this particular storyline definitely takes a backseat. A part of the episode that's so controversial and has caused so many one-star reviews on IMDb deals with homosexuality. Like many modern shows, Blue Bloods attempts to deal with topics that are particularly relevant at the moment. This episode centers around one of the officers being outed as gay and his partner refusing to work with him anymore. Our favorite cast of characters end up going up against the church and leaving fans with a message that we should accept each other for who we are. There's nothing wrong with being homosexual. So, what's wrong with that? Honestly, there isn't anything wrong with that. This kind of subject matter can get divisive, and there are plenty of people out there that feel strongly against equality. It seems as though people have flocked to IMDb to voice their opinions against the gay community, which has driven the score for this episode down quite significantly. At the end of the day, some people just aren't ready to face reality. Perhaps having an episode where people who are homophobic are seen as the bad guys hits just a little bit too close to home. Along the line of negative comments are people complaining that the episode had shoved a political issue down their throats. However, having an episode of a cop show dealing with hate crimes and discrimination against gay people isn't showing anything down anybody's throat, but a reflection of unfortunate reality. Some might think that having a ranking system determined by the public is a bad idea when it comes to episodes like this. As if a certain topic is heavily disliked by a group of people, they can all go online together and skew the ratings. This is a perfect example of this, but it's also important to show the general public perception. Ultimately, what is shown is being the worst episode of Blue Bloods on IMDb makes for a whole other interesting debate, as it's a bit of a mystery as to whether it's actually the worst episode or just deals with a topic that makes some people uncomfortable. We're curious as to whether the possible upcoming season 13 of Blue Bloods is going to have any episodes that are ranked lower than some of these. Only time will tell, as we're still waiting for official confirmation of the next season. Hopefully we'll get a date soon, and our fingers are crossed for a trailer. But what do you think? Is your least favorite episode of Blue Bloods on this list? See you in the next video.